PUM. During a recent interview with political commentator Tucker Carlson, Russian President Vladimir Putin utilized the platform to disseminate propaganda regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In addition, he took the opportunity to criticize the United States while justifying his stringent measures against independent media coverage of the Kremlin. The interview was also a headline-grabbing moment for Carlson, a former cable news anchor who launched a new program on the X platform. The beginning of the interview and Carlson's timid attempts to object. Putin began the interview by dismissing Carlson's suggestion that the invasion of Ukraine was motivated by Moscow's concerns about the U.S. In response, Putin questioned whether they were having a talk show or a serious conversation, prompting a laugh from Carlson. Despite initially promising to provide historical context for the war within a time frame of 30 seconds to a minute, Putin proceeded to delve into Russia's history for an extensive period of approximately half an hour, tracing it back to the 8th century. Carlson, struggling to keep up with the historical narrative, expressed his difficulty in tracking their progress and questioned the relevance of this historical account to the invasion. Putin reiterated his previous comment about the nature of their conversation, emphasizing the need for seriousness. In the midst of his lengthy monologue, Putin began gesturing to someone behind the camera and offered to provide documents to substantiate his claims. Carlson, appearing confused, acknowledged that Putin wasn't inventing things, but expressed uncertainty about the document's relevance to an event that occurred 2 years ago. Nevertheless, Putin persisted in his insistence on presenting documents from his historical archives. The prolonged historical digression and Putin's unwavering determination to provide documents that seemed unrelated to the immediate topic suggest that he may be living in his own world, detached from the realities of the 21st century. Putin has been given the opportunity to say whatever he thinks. Throughout the extensive 2-hour conversation, Carlson not only provided Putin with a platform to express his unfiltered views on the history of Russia-Ukraine relations, but also assumed the role of a diligent student, eagerly absorbing the Russian president's lecture on Russia's alleged right to annex Ukrainian territory. During the interview, Carlson even went as far as admiring Putin's encyclopedic knowledge of the region, offering minimal resistance to the Russian president's assertions regarding the ongoing and violent conflict. According to Putin, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will, presenting his statement as an unquestionable truth. However, once the interview was made public, critics worldwide swiftly identified the multitude of falsehoods and misleading statements that Putin had presented unchecked by the host. Sarah Rainsford of the BBC highlighted the glaring absence of crucial facts, stating, "None of the actual facts of his all-out invasion were presented to him," Putin, including allegations of war crimes in Bucha, Irpin, and beyond. It is evident that this part of the interview resembled more of a lecture, with Carlson assuming the role of a compliant student rather than a critical interviewer. The lack of pushback allowed Putin's narrative to go unchallenged, perpetuating a one-sided perspective. Interestingly, even before the interview began, Carlson introduced the Russian president to his viewers, stating, "Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine, so our opinion would be to view it in that light as a sincere expression of what he thinks." This introduction further solidified Carlson's alignment with Putin's views, disregarding the need for objective analysis. It is crucial for journalists to uphold their responsibility to scrutinize and fact-check the statements made by world leaders, ensuring the dissemination of accurate information and avoiding the propagation of misleading narratives. In this instance, Carlson's approach fell short, allowing Putin's unfiltered views to dominate the conversation without proper challenge. Putin directly blamed the U.S. for starting the war. Putin vehemently criticized the United States and its leaders for their financial support to Ukraine and their involvement in international affairs. In addition, Putin suggested, without providing concrete evidence, that U.S. intelligence agencies were undermining the Biden administration. Tucker Carlson, in response to Putin's remarks, posed a question that implied agreement with the notion that elected officials' decisions can be undermined by agency heads. He said, "So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected, in your telling." Furthermore, Putin reprimanded Congress leaders for their continued funding of Ukraine's war effort, dismissing it as a provocation and a cheap provocation at that. He questioned the necessity of the United States' involvement in a conflict thousands of miles away, urging them to prioritize pressing domestic concerns such as border issues, migration, and the national debt. Putin stated, "Do the United States need this? What for? Thousands of miles away from your national territory. Don't you have anything better to do? You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt. Putin's portrayal of the U.S.'s stance on Ukraine aligned with the sentiment expressed by Carlson and other prominent figures on the American right. They argued for a reduction or cessation of financial aid to Ukraine, advocating for a shift in focus towards domestic matters. Putin talks about Bush, Trump, and Boris Johnson. During a discussion about former U.S. Presidents George Bush and Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin made some interesting remarks. Regarding Bush, Putin described him as a tough politician who played a significant role in facilitating Ukraine's potential membership in NATO. Putin acknowledged that Bush oversaw 5 waves of expansions for the alliance, which opened the door for Ukraine's aspirations. However, Putin later expressed his positive sentiments towards Bush, stating that they had a very good relationship and that Bush was no worse than any other politician. This suggests that despite the accusations against the United States, Putin held a favorable view of Bush and his leadership. Furthermore, Putin shared his personal experience with Trump, emphasizing that his relationship with the former U.S. president was not solely based on Trump's personality. In a critique of the elites, Putin asserted, "I had such a personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader." This statement implies that Putin's interactions with Trump went beyond personal dynamics and focused on broader matters of importance. In summary, Putin's remarks about Bush and Trump indicate that despite the accusations against the U.S., he spoke positively of both leaders, highlighting their contributions and emphasizing the significance of their leadership beyond personal attributes. During a discussion on the continuation of the war, Russian President Vladimir Putin attributed some responsibility to Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain. Putin claimed that Johnson dissuaded Ukraine from reaching a peace agreement with Russia. In Putin's words, Johnson possessed a pure heart, but lacked a great mind, as he believed that Moscow could be defeated on the battlefield. Putin expressed his disbelief at Ukraine's compliance with Johnson's demands or persuasion, stating, "The fact that Ukraine obeyed the demand or persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, seems ridiculous." The Russian leader expressed his deep sadness over the situation, emphasizing that the hostilities could have been halted a year and a half ago with a peace agreement. He further added, "But the British persuaded us and we declined this. Where is Mr. Johnson now?" And the war continues. Putin's remarks attempt to shift blame away from himself and instead place it on Boris Johnson and others, while absolving Putin of responsibility for the continuation of the war. Evan Gershkovich could be released. During their conversation, an intriguing moment occurred towards the end when Tucker Carlson asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to release Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. The United States has claimed that Gershkovich is being unlawfully detained amidst the heightened tensions with Russia. Carlson, without delving into the specifics or Putin's perspective on the matter, straightforwardly inquired if Putin would consider releasing Gershkovich as a gesture of decency. Carlson proposed that they would bring him back to the United States. In response, Putin stated, "We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them." Putin went on to accuse Gershkovich of espionage and working as a spy, thereby justifying his detention. Carlson challenged Putin's assertion, countering, "He's a 32-year-old newspaper reporter." Putin, like a seasoned demagogue, skillfully evaded Carlson's request, stating, "I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland." Putin, employing his experience as a skilled manipulator, managed to slip out of Carlson's grasp, leaving the situation unresolved and Gershkovich's release uncertain. Thank you for watching. Please give a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe.